Today I want to talk to you about how Buddhism and the Dharma of early Buddhism in particular can help us in the modern world. This may be the most important video I've ever done. I'm Doug Smith of the Online Dharma Institute, that's onlinedharma.org, where you can go to find material about early Buddhism. If you're new to this channel and interested in living a wiser and a kinder and a calmer life, consider subscribing to this channel and click the bell down below if you want to receive notifications when I come out with new videos. So I talk just now about wiser, kinder, calmer, about living wiser, kinder, calmer lives. And that is the basis around which I come up with ideas for talks on this channel. And this may superficially seem like a personal issue about like something just for you to make your own life better. But while that is true, it is going to make your own life better to live a wiser and a kinder life and a calmer life. It's much bigger than that as well. It's something that the ripples of which extend well beyond your own life and into the world at large, and can make the world a better place. And so what I want to do in today's video is first look at some of the problems that we face nowadays, the problems that really may be very, very serious for us as humans on this world. And then, in the second part of the video, turn to some solutions and some of the ways that the Dharma of early Buddhism in particular, Buddhism in general, can help us to solve perhaps some of these problems. So first let's turn to the problems. I wrote a long blog post about this several years ago on my friend Justin Whitaker's blog, and I'll leave a link to that down below, which should have a bit more material about this, what I'm going to be discussing today in this video, as well as some links that might be useful to you. And I'll also have links to other things down below in the show notes, including that blog. So what are the problems? To begin with, we nowadays live at what we might think of as almost an apex of a long kind of improvement in various features of life, including things such as overall income, at least for, now this is obviously not perfectly distributed by any means around the world, but I'm talking in a general overall scale, especially for those of us living where you can access YouTube videos and so on. Increase in income, an increase in food production, in caloric intake. We eat more nowadays than we used to. In medicine and so on. And in the 20th century in particular, an increase in life expectancy. This really didn't begin, this increase in life expectancy until around the turn of the 20th century, over a century ago. And many of these things, of course, have been very beneficial, and we don't want to deny that. A lot of these, the benefits that we've seen or the improvements that we've seen in life are not things that we would want to let go of. However, there has been downsides to all of this. In particular, there is all of this improvement in life has come with several issues. In particular, there's an increase in the amount of power that each of us has as an individual, which can be for good or for ill. And as I think we've seen, a lot of that power has been used for ill. The other issue, of course, is that the power of all of us as humanity on this globe has grown. And as our power has grown, we have also made impacts on the biosphere, on the world, that have gotten more and more treacherous as time has gone on. So just as examples, whereas many centuries ago, an individual person could do relatively little by themselves. If they wanted to do ill, there wasn't that much they could do. They could pick up a sword perhaps and kill somebody. But nowadays we find that technologies for doing ill are widely available and becoming more widely available as time goes on. So for example, genetic programming technology, which is still perhaps in its infancy nowadays, the kinds of technology we would need to produce, say, a disease that might be harmful to many people, is going to become more and more widely available. Not simply the sort of thing that can be done by governments and so on, but could be done by individuals. Also, we know that problems with the internet have increased over time. script kiddies, as they're called, people who don't know very much, can nevertheless find ways to purchase things online that will allow them to make our lives more difficult. And we know nowadays that, for example, our electricity grid is hooked up to the internet. So somebody who wants to do ill can by themselves potentially do quite a lot of it. And when it comes to the impact that all of us as a species has on the globe, of course we don't need to go any farther than to think of anthropogenic global warming. This issue of all of the factories and all of the things that we need to create a lot of the wealth that we have knock-on effects in producing greenhouse gases, which are in the medium to longer term, and indeed now we're even seeing more and more in the immediate term, are causing changes in global climate, which are going to become potentially worse over time and are going to could potentially make the life very difficult for humanity in the future. And there are ways that power on the individual level and on the collective level can condition each other. So, for example, we find that some people, some very wealthy people who have been able to profit off of many of the industries that cause global warming, have, through the increase in power of individuals, in other words, we see the increasing power of individuals through things like the internet, these individuals who are wealthy and powerful are then able to leverage that power and wealth to distribute propaganda out towards the public, making them believe that there is no such thing as global warming, making them believe that if there is global warming, that they aren't responsible for it, and so on. And so there are lots of conditional ways that the individual power and the collective power can work together for the greater ill, the greater problems of humanity down the road. In one early sutta, the Buddha compares the potential ill effects of the foolish people as being the sorts of things that are often difficult to discern initially, but that can have great ramifying effects over time that can cause great harm to numbers of people. He compares this to a small fire that starts in a grass hut. You know, a grass hut which is small, clearly doesn't seem to have much importance in the vast scheme of things. But if not attended to, that fire can then grow out of control to the extent that it threatens and even can destroy houses that are well built with shuttered windows and so on that are built to withstand fire. In other words, the ill effects of foolish people may seem small at the time, but they can over time ramify if they're not effectively dealt with. And indeed, it often seems to be the case that our society nowadays is built to amplify a lot of this foolishness. And I think we see this in our social networks, which amplify some of the least wise among us on things like Twitter, Facebook, and so on, to broadcast what is clearly false information to a vast audience. I did an earlier video on having to deal with this kind of rising tide of information and how we can perhaps work better with it and navigate it better. I'll put a link to that video down below in case you want to read more about that. Now, in a recent paper about mindfully facing climate change, the Buddhist scholar Analio has argued that when approaching this problem of climate change, or we might even say any social or political problem, we have to be careful not to pin blame too much on people as individuals, but rather, he suggests, we should be looking to pin blame on particular corrupted mental states that those people have. Now, why does he suggest that we change our focus in this way? He suggests it because if we focus too much on individuals, which is the natural human thing to do, we tend to foment or create hatred in ourselves. In other words, we tend to get very, very angry. And anger itself is part of the problem, as we'll get to in a moment. So what he suggests is that we focus instead on the corrupted mental states. And and become aware of the fact, through our studies of the problems that we're seeing in the world today, of the power that such corrupted mental states can have to do ill. And indeed, the point that we've just been making about a greater power for ill being in the hands of individuals, being in the hands of society as a whole, it's also the case that, you might say, greater power is in the hands of particular corrupted mental states. So a state of hatred or a state of greed, in the past, of course, would have been able to do a great ill, as the Buddha himself says, but now it's able to do even more greater ill. The point here is that in Buddhism and Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist Dharma, the problems of the world, or many of the problems of the world, we can trace back to these kinds of corrupted mental states, to mental states of greed, of hatred, and of ignorance. And what we've just been seeing, what we've just been discussing, are states of greed causing ignorance. Now, how does that work? States of greed in people who are powerful and wealthy and want to retain that power and wealth, who gain that wealth and power through, let's say, production of greenhouse gases, through production of certain kinds of outputs that may be bad for the environment. Those people then bankroll or help support propaganda outlets, which then lead to ignorance in the general public, that foment ignorance, that counteract the public's ability to understand and accept the truth about the world. And this is a very dangerous development. Now, all of this sounds rather depressing, I have to say, but what I would like to do now, instead of wallowing on all of that, is to turn towards solutions. Because it's the solutions really that are really where we should be focusing ourselves. And many of us will say that the solutions are that we need more technology and that we need more knowledge, an increase in knowledge or a dissemination of correct information. And for sure, certainly those are both correct. We need more technology, better technology, let's say in clean production of energy, better solar power, better solar, or I should say, electric cars and so on. That is for sure part of the solution. And also, greater knowledge, greater information, better information is also part of the solution. We need to disseminate information that gets out more broadly to the public and that the public can better understand. That is, again, part of the solution. But the deeper problem here involves ethics, involves learning to be able to better distinguish between helpful, useful, skillful mind states and mind states that are less helpful or skillful, that will make our lives, mind states that will make our lives better versus those that will not. A perfect example being that we have to begin to learn for ourselves the ways in which ownership of things, the ways in which possession can also be a burden. I think we understand, all of us, we're led to understand by society, even perhaps by our genetic heritage, who knows, that possession is a good thing, that we should look to own more of the world, that we should look to build up our dominance by displaying how many houses we have and how big our bank account is. That is a very human kind of thing to do. But I think it also is of extreme help, and in fact, even more help nowadays, to understand how that kind of ownership can be a burden to us. To understand how we can actually be happier with fewer things, or at least with not so many things. That happiness does not come from buying. Happiness does not come from ownership. Happiness does not come from piling up wealth. And if we can see this, then we can perhaps see a route towards a lower intensity lifestyle. A lower intensity lifestyle that will make our lives on this planet better for ourselves and better for everyone else and better for the planet as a whole. And by saying that, I'm not trying to argue that buying things isn't fun and interesting and the kind of thing that we can enjoy. I myself like buying things from time to time. I'm not gonna lie. But the point is, is to see the downsides as well as the upsides, because consumerism as a whole, the basic consumerist mindset that so many of us are brought up in, is itself part of the problem here. And so it's good to focus on the downsides as well as the upsides. We also need to learn that unlimited population growth is not an unalloyed good. It's not the sort of thing that we should be looking to increase forever into the future, because the planet cannot sustain it. And I think expecting that we're going to be able to populate the universe in anything like a reasonable amount of time is simply a pipe dream. So what we need to do is to look for, again, a lower intensity kind of lifestyle, and a smaller human footprint on this planet will make such a lifestyle that much easier to attain. Indeed, I'd say that we need to learn that while technological progress in the sciences, technology, in the world around us that we see and live in, is all well and good and has produced a whole lot of wonderful things for us that we're using today. The fact that you're looking at this on YouTube is a perfect example of that. But so while this is great, I think even greater would be progress in ethics, progress in kindness, in compassion, in harmony among people, in learning to work together on collective goals. These are the kinds of, this is the kind of progress that I think is going to be of longer and deeper kind of benefit to us all. And interestingly, the technologist and founder of Sun Microsystems, a man named Bill Joy, realized this back at the turn of the millennium, back in the year 2000, when he wrote an article about these very topics, in which he praised the ideas of the Dalai Lama in this book, which I have a prior video about. I'll put a link to it down in the show notes, where these ideals that the Dalai Lama brings up in this book, these secular ideals that he puts forward as a way that we can all live much better lives together on this planet. As Bill Joy says, where can we look for a new ethical basis to set our course? I've found the ideas in the book Ethics for the New Millennium by the Dalai Lama to be very helpful. As is perhaps well known but little heeded, the Dalai Lama argues that the most important thing is for us to conduct our lives with love and compassion for others, and that our societies need to develop a stronger notion of universal responsibility and of our interdependency. The Dalai Lama further argues that we must understand what it is that makes people happy, and acknowledge the strong evidence that neither material progress nor the pursuit of the power of knowledge is the key, that there are limits to what science and the scientific pursuit alone can do. So there are limits to technological progress. There are limits to material progress. There are limits to the progress of knowledge. There's only so far that can take us. We need progress in other ways, progress in ethics, progress in living together with kindness and compassion. And these are the very hallmarks, the bedrock of this channel, what I'm trying to get across here, of living wiser and kinder and calmer lives. Now, I don't mean to claim that it's only in Buddhism that we can find this. Of course, we can find similar kinds of wise teachings in many, many other philosophies around the world, or religions and whatever. Without such progress on wisdom and kindness and calm, I have a fear that we may have trouble down the line trying to figure these things out, trying to live together on this ever smaller planet. However, if we can make progress, if we can get out the news about this, then I think our future may be bright. So do spread the news about the kinds of things that we're talking about here on this channel. Spread them to your friends, to your coworkers, to your family. Let other people know about them, because that's the only way we're going to really help the broader world. And I think it's extremely important that we also consider how this can affect our own economy and our own society. And I did an earlier video about Buddhist economics, which most people don't know much about, and I'll put a link to it up on the screen because I think would be important for you to know about as well. Thanks so much for your attention. Thanks so much to all of my supporters over on Patreon, and we'll catch you on the next video. All of you, please be well.